Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I wish I was sitting here to bring you guys some good news, but there's been a lot of debate around a couple of topics, and one being the captive breeding. Now, if you guys have been following the story in the past couple of weeks, especially due to near to the towards end of March, our national government, released a statement that they will be going ahead with the submitted policy by the environmental candidate Barbara Creasy. She submitted a proposal going for government to end all captive breeding lions and rhinos, unfortunately. So, like that being said, it's going ahead. Unfortunately, another battle and another harsh step of reality in the hunting fraternity. But before we get into this week's podcast, of course, there's always people that we have to say thank you to. And this week's podcast episode is sponsored by Scully's. If you guys haven't yet, head along to Scully's.co.za to find out more a little bit, or catch it in one of the links in the description or on any one of my social media platforms to purchase your guys' collection. And use the discount code PHJ10 for some awesome discounts on your next Scully's purchase. And then, of course, the usual Maxis, Splitting Image, Taxidermy, just everyone for being behind me. Treason, I just want to say a very big thank you to each and every single one of you. We've grown immensely over the past couple of months, and it's been absolutely fantastic. So with that being said, there is a huge favor I would like to ask. Doesn't matter on which platform you're listening, watching this podcast, whatever platform you are or you enjoy, it would mean the world to me if you head along, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications, like the episode, interact with the episode, comment. It goes a long way for the algorithm. And of course, the more traction and the more popularity the show can get, the better and the more opportunities I have out there to bring in you guys this kind of content. So it's been an absolutely incredible ride. We almost breaking the top 20 in the hunting podcast on FeedSpot, which I'm pretty excited about. But other than that, I can't thank you guys enough for getting involved, liking and supporting my channel thus far. It's been an absolute roller coaster ride. So while we wait, let's get into it. So guys, like mentioned before, the late weeks heading to the back end of March, we were rocked. The hunting fertility was rocked with the word that our government will be going ahead with the policy of banning captive breeding. Now, a lot of it, captive breeding has always had this very evil stigma surrounding it. But like I've mentioned in many, many podcasts before, South Africa is one of the most rich biodiversity, diverse countries there is in this world. One of our greatest success stories and our conservation success stories, besides a lot of the species of animals that we actually conserve, is our land. But with that being said, this also comes with a necessity. Sorry, I'm tongue twisting my words here. A necessary evil. And what I mean by that is that we have to physically manage our wildlife populations, regardless what it may be, whether it be antelope roaming the plains or the hungry lions of the savannah. We have to continuously monitor our population and breeding facilities. So with that being said, over the past couple of years, breeding fraternities have shot up all over the show. You're finding a lot more people are finding a lucrative business within the breeding facilities of lions, rhinos. Just the other day, we had a massive rhino breeder go insolvent, unfortunately, due to poor management. However, it has been rescued by our National Sandparks Organization, an NPO that has been on the backdrop, and even them even them, they still have to physically have human intervention in managing all their herds. So captive breeding, yes, of course, it has had its very negative stigma. However, like mentioned, in South Africa, we have an ecosystem that us as humans, regardless of the sector you come from, whether you're a hunter, a conservationist, a Greenpeace person, a vegetarian, a meat eater, no matter where you come from all walks of life, we've had a negative impact in our wildlife, from overpopulation being one of the major ones, having to increase larger cities, infrastructure, encroaching on this wonderful land that we have. However, bringing it back to game farmers and our land conservation, it's been a huge success. So although we've had overpopulation and all these negative impacts that have had across the board, not just from one segment of the population, our farmers and our natural inhabitants have found a way to make sure that there's enough land for agriculture and wildlife species, which has been an incredible battle. And I've touched on this on a lot of podcasts, whether it be from management of conservancies to breeding facilities to game ranch management. It's been across the board a huge success. However, our government obviously doesn't feel that way. So this was, I'm reading statements, and I'm reading a lot of the information I've got off the internet. The one particularly, the Daily Maverick quoted Mrs. Creasy. This will enhance South Africa's position as a mega diverse country and leader in the conservation and sustainability use of these iconic species. Now, my honest opinion, and remember, guys, this podcast is going to be based on honest opinions. I've been in the industry for some time. I've seen what I've seen, and I'm going to give my honest opinion on what I believe might be the best way to go about things, however, and my personal opinion on these sort of things. So reading that comment, I have full confidence in saying that this lady has no idea on what she is talking about. Because if she has been following the conservation practices that have been followed in South Africa for a very long time, she would see we are already such a hugely successful biodiverse country. We've brought in some incredible species like the roan antelope, the lechwe, which is thriving on certain parts of South Africa, which never was there before. We're constantly seeing kudu populations, springback populations in the wild, crocodile, hippo, all of these animals in the wild continuously growing. However, they are physically managed by human beings and park services, which is nothing wrong with that. We've created these ecosystems. Now we have to monitor it. It goes along, the article brought up this one particular point that I took from us. The acceptance of the policy position coincides with the release of the discussion by the Environment Department of Biodiversity Economy Strategy. This proposed to grow areas under conservation called mega living conservation landscapes from 20 million hectares to 34 million hectares by 2024, an area equal to 7 Kruger National Parks. Ladies and gentlemen, if us having conservation of over 20 million hectares of land, that is a success story in its own. Do we need to go up and bump it all the way up to 34 million, an extra 14 million hectares? Well, I think the best part to start is not by culling our lion population and our rhino herds. It will be by actually putting people under population control. However, we've tried that with COVID, and that didn't really work very successfully, did it? So usually, how can I say, biased statement made there. I don't think, I personally think by increasing the land, it's not going to be, I mean, well, what good is it to increase it by 14 million hectares when you don't see a single wild lion roaming, roaming freely. Well, I've tried to box around and I've tried to have a look at more more facts that this would bring. However, one that springs to mind is that between 8,000 and 10,000 lions are going to have to either be relocated or euthanized. Now, this would be a hugely controversial thing to happen in South Africa in decades, because to euthanize over 8,000 lions kind of pretty seems, robbing Peter to pay Paul type of thing. And what is the hidden agenda behind it? I've always said with species such as this, with the rhino, the rhino horn battle is continuously going on. We're trying to get that legalized as soon as possible so that situations like this, I mean, the conservation park that where almost 2,000 rhinos were homed had a horn recovery process. So they had buckets or vaults full of rhino horn. So why not flood the market, bring the demand down, and let's save our rhino population, whether it be in the wild or in captivity. So that also, I know there's roughly about 300 farms that currently have captive bred lions on them. Now, what does this mean? What is a captive bred species? As far as I'm concerned, anything that is fenced in may be captive. So does that mean that our sand parks that house, I know just down the road at an elephant park, they've got a pride of lions. Does that mean that that's captive bred lions? So at the end of the day, where we're going to relocate these 8,000, the Kruger National Park is definitely not one place that you want over 8,000 lions to be encroached on. Because not only that will that completely destroy the biodiversity that the Kruger Park has, but it'll also be a management system of health. So my question is still, what is going to be the game plan surrounding this? Or better this, and again, my opinion, what is the hidden agenda behind it all? Why all of a sudden are we just going to have this massively mapped system when lion bone trade is at an all-time high, so too is rhino horn trade? Is somebody at the top feeding off of this and benefiting hugely in their back pockets for keeping this illegal? Or is there really, really a strategic game plan behind it? I call this effect the Lion King effect, because now we are somewhat categorizing a lion in a completely different aspect in the circle of life within South Africa. And I say that because, like again, I mentioned earlier, it's our ecosystem that we've created. And now it's important for us to go ahead and manage that. However, if we've got people calling the shots at the top of the food chain that actually don't even know what they're talking about, or lining their pockets with a substantial paycheck at the end of the day, we are always going to have our backs up against the wall and fighting a losing battle. However, the article goes on to say, although some operators may implement acceptable standards of welfare, there are major animal welfare conservations in the industry in general. This policy objective seeks to ensure duty of care towards lions. So this objective seeks to ensure duty of care towards lions. So somewhere along the line, human intervention is going to have to be a part of it. And they know that. They know that. Just the other day, we had the Botswanan government reaching out to Germany and saying, well, look, if you guys are going to ban elephant hunting, so to the UK, if you guys are going to ban elephant hunting, well, then we'll come and drop 2,000 elephants on your doorstep and let's see how you manage them if you're saying that this is an unsustainable way of managing wildlife through hunting. Because I forget his name, but I'll pull out the article. I am going to do a separate podcast on this because it was an incredible story. The president of Botswana understood that they've run into a little bit of a situation with the conservation of the elephants. They are way, way too overpopulated. And however, Germany and the UK have jumped on this bandwagon, banning the importation of these animals coming in, as far as hunting is concerned. Now, I understand from a zoo perspective. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a massive zoo advocate. However, in this situation, these captive bred lions, a lot of them they were utilized for photography purposes, but a very, very small majority of them. However, so yeah, the policy objectives seeks to ensure the duty of care towards the lions. The policy spells out the steps required: halt domestication of lions in controlled environments, end exploitation of captive and captive bred lions, end the captive breeding of lions, including through sterilization, close captive lion facilities, develop an exit process to respect of the disposal of lions in existing captive facilities. So the exit process. So one of the big things when people come to me with these when these policies get spelled out is always the exit process, right? Never gets thought of. It's always, let's get the policy in place and then we will think about the exit strategy. That is completely against every kind of policy out there. You should have a foolproof blueprint plan on what is going to actually happen to these animals. Because right here now, they haven't even thought of that. And that is the incredible part about this whole thing. It's absolutely disgusting. Improve security of wild lions to prevent a shift in illegal killing of derivatives from wild lion populations. How are you going to do that? They're killing wild rhinoceroses for their horns. How are you, by getting rid of the captive breeding lions, how are you going to ever save the wild lion population? If the lion bone trade continues to gradually increase over time, it's going to get to a point where it's going to be increasingly popular for them to have lion bones. And how are you going to protect that? Expand the number of distribution of extensive wildlife systems containing free roaming lions. How are they going to do that if they can't build up an exit strategy for these animals? Address the future employment of workers in the industry. That begs, how many sustainable farms out there without the income of the photography and the hunters are going to be able to sustain their wildlife lodges? That's the next question. Develop tools for ending the keeping, breeding, handling, and trade in captive lions, and they're parts of derivative hunting of captive and captive bred lions, and establishment of new captive lion facilities. Kind of contradictory. Anyway, implementing these actions, says the policy position, will result in closure of the captive lion industry. Devastating. Very, very, very devastating. So, which was another article which will put into perspective numbers, right? So there are currently in excess of more than 8,000 to 10,000 lions bred and held in captivity in South Africa, which lions and are or will be used for various tourist attractions, such as lion cubs used for petting. Lions are used for people to walk with as tourist attractions. Once the lions get older, they are usually sold to hunting facilities wherein the lions are confined to an enclosure and people can pay to shoot and kill them. Whilst canned lion hunting is illegal in South Africa, captive bred lion hunting is allowed, in terms of which lions are bred in captivity and held in small enclosures until they are shot, killed by hunters. So this article particularly names that. So as far as I'm concerned, I know the captive the captivity enclosure has to be greater than 6,000 hectares, which is roughly just over 12,000 acres, which is a substantial amount of ground. And this is also after intense rehabilitation for hunting of those specific species. So getting those lions back out into the wild, actually hunting for themselves again. And if that is unsuccessful, yes, hand fed. But like I said, these animals are coming from a captive environment. Oftentimes, these animals are a lot more dangerous than the ones out in the wild. However, I do think an article like this is where the bad stigma comes from, because it needs to be dived a little bit more into. The deceased lion's head and or skins are usually kept by the hunter for their trophies. Older lions may sometimes also be kept for breeding more cubs, petting, and then slaughtered when no longer viable for breeding. Lion bones are sold and even exported to other countries for use by people. While CITES prohibits the trade of bones from wild lions, it does not ban the export of bones from captive lions in South Africa. So that article put everything into perspective on how many animals, how many species of, or sorry, how many captive bred lions there are out there, and what exactly actually gets used for. Now, however, CITES will have their fair share in saying what we are saying. If I had to look at these articles and really understand where has this all gone wrong, where is the Lion King effect coming? And I think it boils down to a couple of things, right? The first one being people are trying to manage our wildlife when our local environmentalists, i.e., being predominantly the farmers from farmer association input and game farms, have successfully managed the conservation of our land and the conservation of many, many species. And there are a couple of species that I can name off the top of my head, like the black wildebeest and the oribi. However, those practices were allowed to happen because a lot more knowledge was taken in by individuals putting the work on the ground as possible. There was not a lot of money involved, and therefore the end product didn't seem really attractive to the higher powers that may be. However, this particular case, with rhino horn being one of the more valued commodities there is in South Africa, and lion bows steadily, gradually gaining in popularity, somebody has to be benefiting from this. They're not going to recall almost 10,000 animals for a humane way to be eradicated off this earth. These animals have been strategically brought in, bred, and strategically managed to a conservation point where they deserve their right and their place in our false ecosystem. And now we've got an individual that has had a brain fart that thinks she can come around and dictate to us on how this is going to go down when she doesn't even have the correct blueprints in place. So what is it for the next step for us as hunters? Have we failed? Have I failed? One of my biggest goals as a professional hunter and as a conservationist, and particularly why this podcast started, was to educate people on why hunting is one of the best conservation tools we have to offer. However, if we're not going to be allowed to do it by external powers like the UK, Germany, predominantly most of it comes from the US as well. I mean, banning of the lion hunting from the Cecil saga was a crippling domino effect that happened in our carnivore's history. Lions have been hunted on this continent for generations. And yes, while a lot of it has changed, and a lot of people don't agree with how they are currently being hunted. However, if you can come up with a better management and a better conservation way, sorry, I don't even think that sounded right, but a better conservation story behind it and how we can actually better monitor, manage our lion population. But then by all means, but I think if we sit here today and agree that this problem is bigger than what we think. Because if this goes ahead, and I do have, there is a little bit of hope in me. Our government can't even executing filling up potholes correctly. So by the time this actually gets implemented and put into action and monitored, I think a lot of our own farmers and management people would have a better exit strategy. So I'm hoping there's a lot of guidance from the correct people within our industry and people that have been there for some time. So one of the more devastating stories I've been able to bring, because I thought after Cease of the Lion, we will kind of get to a point where people understand the importance of hunting these carnivores. And I am by no means saying that there's individuals out there that are doing this by the book and that are doing this correctly. By no means. I was involved with a game farm that did so. However, there's always place to rectify it. And there's always ways that we can handle with those individuals as best as we possibly can to bring out the conservation practices. Because that's what conservation is all about, right? Not everybody is going to agree with how the principle goes along with it. But if it works and if it is managed correctly, then by all means, why change it? So to smack those individuals on the wrist and say, hang on, guys, if you guys are going to want to be a part of this process, do it correctly. Because the way you're doing it now not only brings the industry into bad light, but it also opens up doors for situations like this to happen. And unfortunately, more often than not, it's the guys that do it incorrectly, they get called out and they get the publicity on it, and then the whole industry has to suffer. And the guys that are doing it right, correctly by the book, ethically, are the ones that are going to lose out massively at the end of the day. Because not only is this exercise, the lion captive breeding, being a hugely costly exercise, but one that we get to, for some people, get to enjoy and appreciate. Like I said, I have the luxury of driving 3 hours down to Addo Elephant Park and seeing majority of the big five there. Maybe 3 out of the five. 4 out of the, no, yeah, 3 out of the five. Which is huge. It's massive. And out of that, we get to appreciate that. Is that something that's going to be taken away? On my weekends with my daughter, where I take her down to the Addo Elephant Park, a thing of the past. Am I never going to see a lion in that park again? Are we going to have to do the commercialized Serengeti migration just to see a lion? Or have we been a part of the evil transition? Have we been a part of the problem? Because we clearly haven't solved it. Although what we thought was a good way of solving it, according to other people, is not. So I've asked these questions in different lights, and I've always thought, well, hang on, how can I do better? Because at the moment I'm sitting here behind this microphone, feeling like I've failed. Because like I said, one of my biggest practices as an individual, as a conservationist, professional hunter, is that hunting should have contributed a lot more to the preservation of our animals. And to lose over 8 to 10,000 animals in one go, that's not a success story that many people will have in their resume. So what can we do? What can we do to be better? I think the more of us that become vocal about these sort of situations, and I plead to people that are listening to this podcast that have got any sort of influence within the industry, use your voice. I know it's one at the moment that I've realized there's a lot of darkness to it. But we've got one of the most powerful tools to utilize, and that's social media. So utilize it to the best of your ability to create awareness on why you think that this practice isn't going to be one of the best. So before we wipe the shit out of our eyes, the king of the jungle might not be roaming these parts of South Africa anytime soon. Well, guys, like I said to you, I didn't want to bring the bearer of bad news all the time. However, I do think this was a topic worth discussing. So the discussion is open. If you guys want to find out more, hit me up on any one of my social media platforms, comment, get involved. Let's comment and let's brainstorm. Let's come up with better plans. So, like I said at the start of this podcast, this episode is brought to you by Scully's. And because we are still doing the giveaways through the podcast, the secret mystery gift is a Scully. So if you guys have watched to this point, I will be releasing a post. Congratulations to everyone that has won so far. I will be releasing a post where you guys can tag your answer in. And hopefully I can take this discussion further. Guys, I'm looking forward to the next couple of weeks with the podcast. I've got some exciting new things that are happening and exciting guests. I'm heading this weekend away to the beautiful town of Cradock, where I will be hunting fallow deer. It is pissing with rain outside and it is ice cold. So, like I said in one of my YouTube episodes, part of the point of the whole thing is that they say one of the telltale signs for the fallow deer rat is that first cold spell in April. Well, so I feel like I'm kind of hitting it at the perfect timing. One of my most favorite times of the year, and I'm really, really looking forward to this one. So if you are, happy hunting. Until then, stay safe, stay blessed, stay humble. We'll catch up with you guys soon. Cheers.